Gregg Geerdes, welcome to the Process podcast, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Why are you doing fantastic?
I just finished a run, our afternoon session for the elite training, so that was enjoyable.
And generally speaking, finishing a session of any sort puts you in a fantastic mood?
Yes. You know, you've accomplished something, and you just feel good, usually.
So I think we're gonna start with some short. I'm going to have my first crack at a short bio, Greg,
Okay.
and this is going to be very limited because I'm just going to go off your CrossFit Games profile. I'm not going to lie. This is you are currently qualified to what's going to be technically your 5th CrossFit Games, but you've been to 3 CrossFit Games, 2015, 16, and 19, competing in the age group category, 45 to 49. And then you bumped up, of course, the 50 to 54s. 2020, you qualified. You were the first seed in the 50 to 54, but of course, that was a COVID year where it didn't end up happening. And you have once again qualified in 2024 in the 55 to 59 category. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
You are currently seeded 5th after the semi-final. So from a CrossFit Games and a CrossFit perspective, you are an aging athlete that is continuing to still... I mean, in the time that I've known you, I still feel like you're still improving and unlocking new facets of fitness, which is pretty damn cool, especially knowing your extensive history. But if you were to describe yourself, Greg, how do you describe yourself, who you are, what you do?
Describe myself as an athlete?
It's an open-ended question, my friend.
Work in progress.
Love it. Please elaborate.
Yeah. Constantly, you know, in all areas of life, there's always room for growth and learning new things and pushing yourself in new areas and building new relationships. Part of my life is moving around, and so you're always having to experience new things, new cultures, new people. And because of that, you need to be able to flow and adapt and grow in areas you might not thought, you know, you'd ever have to do before. Just think about what foods are available in each country is going to be different. Each gym is going to be different. The cultures that we deal with, the languages are all different. So you're constantly being stretched. And so, yeah, work in progress. There's always spiritually, physically, intellectually, everything. You're constantly being challenged.
Tell me a bit more about this moving around the world piece, because it's something I know we talked about very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And I know prior to Hong Kong, you've lived in some pretty, to most people, I think, would think pretty obscure places that most of us won't have known another person probably to have come from that country or even visited that country. So tell me a little bit about your life and what has enabled you to be traveling so much and moved you around the world so much.
So I currently work for the State Department, Diplomatic Security Service. Diplomatic Security is the law enforcement security arm for the State Department. So we are federal agents and have the responsibility of protecting the Secretary of State, foreign dignitaries that come to the U.S., ambassadors around the world in different challenging locations. And we do investigations into passport and visa fraud. So that's anything, when you think of any global investigations, we're usually involved. You know, anybody who's moving between countries illegally to do anything from organized crime, human trafficking, human smuggling. And we tie in with other agencies when we do this, but because we're at 270 plus locations around the world, we're kind of the law enforcement arm that has leads on international events when it comes to law enforcement and security. And then also we protect embassies and all the embassies and consulates, U.S. embassies and consulates around the world. So because of that, we are required to move about every 2 to 3 years.
So that's something you sign up for right from the very beginning.
Right from the beginning. You know that's part of the job. You know that you're going to be moving every 2 to 3 years, which is a challenge in many respects. A lot for the family. You know, imagine if you got to tell your children every 2 to 3 years, "Hey, I know you just made friends, but we're going to have to move," and then you take them to different locations. The other thing is that as I was saying earlier, you're having to adapt to every new place you go to. And that means finding, well, where are we going to shop for groceries now? You know, or which side of the road do they drive on? Or which side is, you know, the car are you going to drive on? What are the rules of the road? You know, simple things like that that you take for granted that, you know, you've grown up in Hong Kong and lived in Hong Kong. It's pretty much been the same, but around the world, everything's you know, everybody has different ways of doing things, and not saying one's right or wrong. It's just, it's different. So we have that challenge of every time we move of having to kind of figure out what you got to do. You know, your job is always changing.
What can you list out some of these places? So tell me some of the places you've lived over your tenure with your current career.
So served in Iraq, of course, the U.S. in Washington, D.C. is our primary location. Taiwan, Beijing, China, Algeria, now in Hong Kong. I also have worked, I served with our MSD, our mobile security deployments. And so on that, traveled around, you know, for providing protection in different areas around the world. Since we protect the Secretary of State, I got to do a little of that for a few of the Secretaries of State. So, you know, you travel wherever you need to go.
And it is, I mean, okay, I don't really know anything about what that actually entails. And, you know, but all I hear is security. And the first thing I think of is like, you're wearing a black suit, you've got an earpiece, you've got black shades, and that's probably more of a bodyguard. But anyhow, what I'm trying to envision here is like where fitness and training has fit into this. And I guess my first question is that a part of the job? You know, is being fit and able-bodied a part of what you do? Or is that something that you have just come across in your own journey, completely not related to your career?
So in order to join diplomatic security service, we do have a fitness standard. It's not, you know.
What is a fitness standard? I have interest.
So a 1.5 mile run.
Just got to complete a 1.5 mile run.
There's standards based on age and requirements for that. We have guys who could do it in mid 7s, you know, so you know, that's moving out, right? I would say most people are not, you know, if you can run in that 6-minute mile time frame, 6 to 7 minute mile, that's good. We also then have max push-ups in 2 minutes and max sit-ups in 2 minutes. So it's not it's encompassing in that. All right, can you run? Do your knees and hips work? And can you maintain a heart rate, right? Push-ups, do you have upper body strength?
And can you leverage your own body weight?
Yep. And sit-ups, do you have core strength? So it's providing a base standard. And then that's requirement in when you start the job. I would say there's a lot of agents who then, yes, we have a requirement to maintain our physical standard or a physical fitness. And so, but it doesn't mean you do CrossFit, right? It can be anything. And we have some agents who are phenomenal runners, agents who've been, one guy who was a good friend of mine, was powerlifting and strongman competitions. Other, you know, people hiking, ice climbing, you know, anything. And for me, I found that CrossFit was a good way because I can bang out a hard workout quickly and in any location, and it's not limited to any piece of equipment. That's worked out for me. And I think there's actually quite a few agents who use CrossFit then because of that, because it's an all body, you know, overall workout, and you can do it in many different locations.
Well, what attracted you to that career? I didn't think I'd be asking so many questions about your job, but now learning a bit more about it, I'm very intrigued. What attracted you to doing that in the first place?
So my background, my undergrad was in engineering, and I got involved in engineering and somehow, and I was also in the Marine Corps, and I got picked up years ago to start evaluating security at different places, and kind of just morphed into joining diplomatic security. Part of that was I was doing it back in the U.S. and traveling on my own, or traveling as part of the job, and I wanted the family to experience life overseas. So as I looked at what was available, and I thought that was a good opportunity so that the family could see things overseas.
Where was the first family move to?
Their first move was Taiwan.
And how was that?
Rough for the first few months, and then tears when they left. So it's anytime you move, it's again, all you have to start over. And as an adult, you go, all right, you can analyze it, but as a kid, you gotta, you trust in your parents that everything's gonna work out. So, but it's all new to them, and now it's a new languages that you're dealing with, new friends, school's different, everything.
And I mean, obviously, you talk about adaptability and constant growth and evolution.
Yeah.
Your kids are now how old?
Oldest, 26.
You can give in CrossFit, you're talking brackets, mate. So you
Yeah,
can
it's
you
all
can
right.
have a 5-year spread.
21, 23, 26.
Nice. Okay.
Right. So it's in a five-year bracket.
And what from them moving around so much in their younger ages, what like life lessons have you seen carried over to who they are now as adults, as young adults?
Their adaptability.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And the small things don't get at, don't bother them, because they've seen, they've had to deal with the big changes already at a young age. So something small doesn't phase them.
How much do you think that last thing that you just said there feeds into your ability to be successful as an athlete?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my athletic background goes way back. And so I think there's a lot of aspects that tie into my background with prior to CrossFit, that CrossFit just fits really well for me right now.
Please share. Where did it all start for you? Where did the fitness journey for Gregg Geerdes start?
Probably on tricycles when I was, 3 years old in the neighborhood, right? Very just outdoors. I had a younger, much like you and Aunt, I had a younger brother.
There's two of you?
Two older sisters and a younger brother. And he was larger than me my entire life. So we always,
I know the feeling.
You know the feeling, right?
In fact, the first 10 years of life, I was marginally larger than him.
Now, I think by the time I turned 6, he was already my size and bigger. and he's a big, strong guy. He's a incredible athlete and just just a big guy. And so throwdowns from early ages continued, at least our parents can tell those stories, right? And
I'm going to pause you there. At what age did he start beating you in throwdowns?
See, I would say that never happened. He might have a different story.
No, I'm going to say the same. But I actually think there's a psychological part.
Yeah.
For the younger brother, there's two psychologies going on. The older brother, like, you can't lose, number one, because that would just be total loss of every little bit of street cred and ego that you might have had. But number two, I think also the little brother, I feel that Ant never truly unleashed on me. And I feel like if he really did, then he probably knew that he could beat me. I think there's a part of him where he respected the fact that I cared about that. I've never had this conversation with him, actually, and now I'm talking about it. I kind of want to ask him if he ever fully held back. But there's also just a point. There was a point in time where I just knew that fighting's no longer going to happen because I'm probably. And I remember it was actually in the gym. The gym was the first time I remember pulling him into the gym when I'd already been going to the gym for a couple of years. I was around 15, probably at this time, 15, 16. And And I pulled him on a family holiday. I said, "Oh, why don't you come with me to the gym, and big brother will show you the way," type thing. And I remember it was a chest press in some gym, a chest press machine. And so obviously I loaded it way too heavy because I was just trying to show, who the man was. And I was on set 3 and he hadn't even done a set. He was just sat there watching me being like, "What are you doing? This is not my thing." And so I said, "Nah, come on, like, have a feel,
Give it a go,
yeah."
right?
And I remember him just repping out way too many reps relative to what I was doing. And that was literally the moment in time where I was like, yeah, the tides have turned. So sorry, back to you.
In any
I
case,
always like to hear about other brother.
In any case,
rivalries.
he's a fantastic man, and so we grew up playing sports, and so baseball, soccer, field football type of thing. And then when I got to high school, focused on running and wrestling. And then I got recruited to run in college. So I ran in college only after freshman year of cross country to have my knees go bad and go to a doctor and be told that you can never run again, to that degree. So at that point, I started actually doing martial arts and rebuilt my knees over about a 10-year period of just doing martial arts.
What martial arts were you doing?
Chinese Kung Fu. And so I had I had 2 amazing instructors. One was when I lived in Michigan, Sifu Lee, who came from China, and taught the old school way. And it was fantastic. And we had a great group of martial artists that we beat on each other, and he was phenomenal. And then when I moved to Virginia, I had Sifu Burris, who was also just a phenomenal martial artist, and I learned a lot from him. And
what made these guys phenomenal in your eyes?
Kind of along that same line of work in progress, always getting better at what they did, but a superior knowledge of martial arts like you haven't seen before. Sifu Lee, again, it was the old school style, and then Sifu Burris was a little bit more technical and dealt with more the Chinese wushu style, as well as a lot of fighting, and just their ability to move and concentrate and focus on what they were doing was phenomenal.
And did you ever take that competitively?
Yeah, actually, so I under Sifu Burris, I tried out for the U.S. wushu team. Yeah, and we actually had a Beijing instructor who came and was helping me prepare. And she, and it's amazing because, it's CrossFit, you look at somebody's form and stuff, but in martial arts and gymnastics and some of, you're looking at, well, no, you're millimeters off, right? And her, from this angle, you look good. This angle, this angle, this angle. From this angle, something's wrong. We need to adjust. Yeah. So,
but is there not 2 strands of it? There's the actual combative side, and then there's the aesthetic side. Is that applied to wushu as well?
Yeah. So then you have the sanshao. The sanshao is the competitive fighting style.
And which side were you?
I did both.
Did both.
So yeah, and that was one thing with Sifu. Both of my instructors, they taught both sides of it.
I'm interested to hear. Okay, so first year college, your knees are shot from running. You get into martial arts, and over the next 10-year period, you kind of undo the injuries. But I'm interested to know, in your opinion, what was it about the martial arts that you think actually helped your body? Was there any particular element to martial arts that you think helped you?
Deep stances. If anything was going to help rebuild my knees, is the stretching and the deep stances.
And the deep stance is like the isometrics.
Yeah, so
your holds.
You're holding, a horse stance for 10 minutes type of thing. And so your muscles are under contraction, and yet they have to be, imagine holding a muscle for 10 minutes where where you need to stay in one spot. And so that muscle needs to learn how to move and keep breathing and blood to keep flowing. It's not just like a 7-second contraction.
Yeah. Which is basically what most of the contractions we do in CrossFit
Right,
are.
right.
Unless you're maybe holding or carrying something. Yeah, we don't do any very, very long, not many long lasting contractions over a period of time. Interesting. The flex, it's funny as you're saying this, and you know what I know of you as an athlete, and when I watch you move, I'm already starting to see elements of like the martial arts stuff now. For someone at at your age, I think you have really great levels of flexibility, mobility, and I watch your warm ups, of the single arm back bridges and the things that you do, and I think it's really cool that you've cultivated. I didn't know where that had come from, because maybe that was just something that you've just always been able to do, or now maybe I'm piecing it together now. Seeing that your previous disciplines are something that you've maintained now, and is probably what's I don't know. Do you think this is what's contributed to allowing you to have so much longevity in what is a pretty brutal sport like CrossFit?
Well, I've had to. I would say I reached back to my martial arts training. So there's a gap from that before I got into CrossFit. So
Please get us back in that story.
So finishing that, we started. Family starts, and you don't have time to go to the gym like you used to. So training at home and then running. So I got back into running, and from there I got into ultra running. And so I started running ultra races with a buddy of mine. And so 50K, 50 miles, 100K, 100 miles. And even two of the top races that I did were Badwater, which is 135 through the desert.
Yeah.
And
Goggins loves that one, doesn't he?
Yeah. So the time I ran, it was 126 degrees. I took fifth that rookie year. So it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal event. And then I also ran Spartathlon, which is 153 miles. That's from Athens to Sparta. So it covers the trail of Philippides when he was traveling from Greece to run to Sparta and ask for support for when the Persians were going to attack. And you have a time cutoff on that. So you have to have a resume just to get into the race. And that year it got to 100 degrees, and only 20% of the people were able to make the time cutoff. I actually was the #1 U.S. finisher, and ran across. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. How many years ago was that?
I ran that race, I want to say, in 2012.
What? I know you said you were doing this with a friend of yours, but what pulled you into that? What pulled you back into running firstly? And then, I mean, running is one thing, but doing, ultra marathons is another thing.
I enjoyed running and was good at it. But all of a sudden it was a group of Marines who were going to go run a marathon. And I said, well, I'll go run that marathon with you. And they'd been training. So I went and ran, and then they said, hey, we're going to go run a 50 miler in a few more weeks. Like, all right, I'll go run the 50 miler with you. And that's kind of how it started, it was kind of a fun thing to do. And I really wasn't putting in the training necessary other than for a few of the races. Like when I ran my 100-mile races, then I would start amping up the training. But if I was doing a 50-mile race, I was probably running 30 miles a week. Really wasn't that much. And then just going out and then running that race.
What about that kind of distance made you keep on doing it?
Well, ultra running, it's I don't know. If you've done something that's 12, 20, 24 hours,
I've coached an athlete who's done multiple ultra marathons, and I've been in a support team, and I know from what I see just how brutal it is, and I see the drop off rates. you know, most 100-mile races, you know, the finishing rate is still 30 to 40%. That's, you know, 60 to 70% of people dropping out. And I'm at these stage checkpoints and people are spewing, throwing up, getting towed away in ambulances. Like, it's brutal. So I'm always interested to know, like, what attracts one to that.
I don't know how to answer that question. You know, there's, you know, a huge part of it is pain management, right? So what is your ability? How do you handle pain? And can you continue even when, and so like one of the things I joke about, you run a 5K or even today when I was running. So I'd finish the, you know, 1200 meters. And yeah, I was breathing hard, but within 3 minutes, my heart rate's down and I'm okay. A 5K, all right, maybe you're uncomfortable for 10, 15 minutes afterwards, or, you know, marathon, you're going to be beat up for a while. When you run 100 miles, your body for the next couple of days is still running. And so it's a level of discomfort that, you know, that is, so that's why it's hard to answer that question of, you know, why do you do that?
Is it the process of going through that and then getting out the other side that attracts you to it? You know, knowing that you're about to do something really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, and there's a lot of strategy to it, you know. So I remember when I ran my first 100-miler, and my sister was out there and a couple of my buddies were out there to be my crew, and talking through my strategy. I was like, I'm walking all the uphills. That's my strategy. And then on the flats or in the downhills, I'm going to run and I'll do the best I can on all the flat surfaces. And right out of the gate, it's 4:00 in the morning. It was amazing. They had a candelabra and guy playing Chariots of Fire, you know, at 4:00 in the morning. We're at this horse barn. There's like 300 people. And within the first 200 meters, there's a hill. And I can run this. No, that's not your strategy. Your strategy is you're walking all the uphills. And I walked that strategy and I was in last place and I finished 10th overall. So, you know, there's mapping out your strategy and sticking to it, even when, oh, I feel really good right now. That's all right. You still have 70 more miles to run at this point, you know, and so you have to kind of look at the long game on what you're doing.
That's interesting because I can see that you apply the same strategy and pacing principles to CrossFit as well. You know, watching you do the quarterfinals and semifinals and, you know, just quickly chatting to you before the workout, what's your strategy here? It was clear that you had a plan, and in the longer workouts, it was about preservation of yourself in the early stages, which is, you know, I think about that stuff a lot. And it was really cool to see that was something that you think about clearly a lot as well. And I always find that people who have endurance backgrounds, especially like very hard endurance style races like ultra marathons, you know, you learn pretty quickly that is a huge factor in not only placing well, but even just finishing. You know, which for a lot of people in ultra marathons is a goal, is a goal in itself. So again, I'm connecting the dots on you and your CrossFit career. I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount. Now, okay, so we get into ultra marathon running. We do some pretty savage tests. Where did that take you to next?
I started to get into, I also was getting into triathlon. So I was swimming, biking in Taiwan.
And can I just ask, Greg, when you're doing these other, you know, you're getting into your ultra marathons and your triathlons, is strength conditioning, is gym-based work a part of your training process as well? Or are you all in on that discipline?
Actually, in my experience, adding the strength-based conditioning helps. So, or that's what I've learned. Okay. And so just tossing out, not doing any um, weightlifting or, calisthenics, I think that's important part of that training. When I was doing the triathloning, I was actually leading a afternoon kind of CrossFit-ish circuit training about 4 days a week. And so that was in addition to all my biking and swimming and running. And so it just keeps your body, I think, strong and fit for when it's getting damaged. So so that then we finished up in Taiwan and moved to Beijing, and I didn't have a good place to swim. The pollution at that time was pretty bad. And so trying to balance biking and running in traffic and was a little bit hard. So again, it's adapting to your environment. What are we going to do? So I started just doing my own training. There was a gym at where we lived and was working out there and kind of maintaining my fitness. And then Janet, my wife, said, "Hey, I've heard about the Great Wall Marathon. I want to run that. Can you train me to run that?" I was like, and I looked it up. I was like, "This is not running." She'd run a marathon before, and I go, "This is not running a marathon. Your body has to be stronger, and you're not fit enough. I can teach you to run. We can work on your running. I can put that together, but you're not fit enough to handle the abuse your body's going to take. You need to start lifting weights." And there's actually a CrossFit gym that's nearby. I'll go check it out and you can join it. I'm all set. I'll just hook you up with this CrossFit gym. And so I went and looked, and that was CrossFit 86 in Beijing with Sam Lien. At the time, there were only 3 CrossFit boxes in all of China. And we looked at it, talked to them. They were good. I said, "All right, honey, you're all set. I got you." It's like, "I'm not going unless you're going." So that's how I got into that's really how I got into I toyed with CrossFit before. I had friends. Actually, interesting story. My brother, I was telling you about before, lived in Southern California and back in the early 2000s and was part of one of the original CrossFit boxes down there. Not one of Glassman, his initials.
San Francisco, I think.
But he was at one of those boxes, and 1 week his coach goes, "Hey, we're going to go to Aromas, California this weekend. There's going to be a barbecue and people are going to do some workouts. You want to come?" And that was in 2007.
No way. He was there.
And
the original.
No, he goes, "I'm too busy that weekend." He still kicks himself for not going to that. But so he had been encouraging me to get into CrossFit back then. I had different agents that I ran into that said, "Hey, you should do this." And I'd been on the website and learned some, was watching some things. But it really wasn't until I started at CrossFit 86 and, having it, what's the difference between a push press and a push jerk, that type of stuff. And Sam, actually, he's like one of those kids that was picked at a young age to go into the sports programs. And it was weightlifting, wrestling, and something like field hockey or something like that he was. And he went into wrestling, but he did a lot of weightlifting for wrestling. And so he was a really technical and good coach. And so we trained there for 2.5, 3 years.
And what was that like? What was your first experience of CrossFit? Joining this box and using it as your marathon prep. What about it kept you there? Kept you coming back?
So one, it was a great opportunity. So one of the things that made it special was that my wife and I would get up at 5 a.m. and together we would go work. It got to the point where I was opening the box at 5:30 in the morning because I was coaching a couple days a week. But at 5:45 we'd have the first class, and and we had a great, group that was with us there, every morning. Everybody knows each other, and we had a lot of fun. And I think that's one of there's certain aspects of CrossFit that I really like. One, you get a taste, gymnastics, weightlifting, tying all these different things together. It kind of prepares you to handle anything, right? And that's what its foundation is. But then the other aspect is you end up building a community of people who rely on each other and look after each other. So, hey, where have you been for the last week? How come you all right? You injured, or is there any, no, I was on leave. Okay, good. But you're looking after each other. We'd have parties, and then everybody, comes and shows up. So you build really good relationships. And it's neat watching how each of them are growing in the process. You can say in the process, right? But during that process of over a year, and you're watching where their weaknesses are and what when you're coaching them, how they're getting past that challenge and building strength and flexibility and speed and pain management, ability to endure, and I think that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about it. But I had been coaching when I was in martial arts too, so I was used to that, watching that and enjoying that experience. I feel the two are very similar. If you're part of a really good martial arts school and a good CrossFit box, you have a lot of the same aspects of a higher level coach with sub coaches, and then students that are all at different levels, from new to well experienced, all working together to get improve their skill sets.
And so how did that Great Wall Marathon go for both of you?
So I wasn't training at all.
Oh, I thought you did it as well.
All I was doing
You're the accountability, but
yeah, I was just the accountability. She knocked it out in, I want to say, right at 6.5 hours. She did it all 3 years. So she ran the Great Wall Marathon 3 times. I did run it with her the first year, and I think I was just over 4 hours. But I hadn't been running at all. And I just tore my hamstring the week before. And so I was really nervous about, I've done no running and I have a tore hamstring. But because of my foundation in running and all the training that I've been doing in CrossFit, I was able to complete the run at in a good time. So
where did the CrossFit Games start to come into the picture? Competitive CrossFit, training at a CrossFit gym and using a methodology to, be fit and healthy and all that is a very different beast to, okay, like I want to go for this thing. Or was that even a thing? Did you just happen to tell me about the journey? How did you end up the game?
I would say I almost fell into it. So in 2014, had a great, I've met a lot of neat people along the way, and a friend of mine at CrossFit 86, Ken, and I he had a lot of experience. He had already been doing CrossFit for a couple of years, and he had just moved to Beijing as well. And we challenged each other. So he was pushing, I had the endurance, but he had more all these background in the weightlifting more, and he had been a semi-pro tennis player at one point. And so he was a really good athlete, and we pushed each other. And I said, hey, the CrossFit Open's coming up. Have you ever done this? I've never done this. And he's like, oh yeah, we've got to do it. So that year, it was 2014. Actually the gym, there was, half a dozen of us did the CrossFit Open, and I made it to the next level.
So that was the regionals days, and you would have had, what was the next level back then for age group again? You had to be
top 200.
That's right.
I was like 188 or something like that. And in preparation, just beforehand, that's when I shredded my hamstring. And I was like, I couldn't pick a bar up. I could run, but if you asked me to pick a barbell off the ground, I couldn't do it.
Tie your shoelaces.
Yeah, right. So, so that year that I was like, well, this is the reason why I don't do, this stupid stuff. And then, so I rebuilt just like with my knees, I rebuilt that hamstring, the muscles around it, and was able to get fitter and said, well, we're going to really go for the open and go hard and see what happens. And
so I'm going to pause you there, Greg. But is this because you just wanted to beat Ken? Or was there some part of you that was like, okay, I made it last year. Like, I really want to see if I can make it again.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, I didn't have any aspirations of making it to the games. I just wanted to see how well I could do. And Ken and I, and there was actually, we had a whole group of guys that we'd get together on Saturdays, and then I would put together these ridiculous workouts that would have us all laid out, and it was a really enjoyable time. Right. And maybe the other guys didn't think so, but I enjoyed it. But, we would, we'd train, I was training every morning with my wife and that group, that early morning group. And then we do a Saturday group a lot of times. And it was just like, hey, I want to really just see how well I can do in the open. So I pushed hard, and I can't remember what place I finished in the open, but I made it to the region. Oh, I think I was, like 53rd or something in the open. And so then in the whatever it was called, it was the quarterfinals or something. I don't know.
It wasn't quarterfinals.
It was next level.
Yeah, but it was still an online competition.
Still online. Yeah. So you'd get 4 or 5 workouts for one weekend type of thing. And I ended up finishing 19th. So I made it to the games, and it was mind blowing. I was like, I went from 53rd place to 19th, and it was just a big shocker. And so now what do I got to do? I don't know what I'm doing, to go to the games.
Did you know what the games was? Like, had you watched it on YouTube?
I'd seen clips of it.
Did you watch Every Second Counts? No.
So I can't remember if I'd seen Every Second Counts at that point or not. I probably watched it afterwards. But there was things I didn't know. I was getting, just even learning what's a muscle up, right? I can remember, what's these butterfly pull-ups? This is ridiculous. A pull-up is you pull yourself up to a bar. What's this weird swinging motion, right?
Was that the year where Spieler did his 100 unbroken? Do you remember that? He was like one of the early guys to incorporate the butterfly. Yeah. I still remember there's a video of him. He's like, I think he might be teaching at level 1, and it's in like it looks like a gymnasium of a school.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, they have just a pull-up bar on the side, and he's like, I'm going to do 100 unbroken butterfly pull-ups. And then he's like, his hands are like shredding up, and he's like still hanging on. I think the first time he gets like 98 or something. Anyway, that was my first like viewing of the butterfly pull-up, being like, wow, that's cool.
So, so then I went, and I'm trying to remember if Sam went with me that. Yeah, Sam.
This is in LA, right?
It was in LA at the Staples Center, and it was amazing. So when it was, you felt like a professional athlete. You got 5 pairs of shoes, 5 pairs of shorts, 5 pairs of shirts, shirts. I've got pictures with me laying out all the gear on the hotel bed, and it's covered with all this gear. It's amazing. And then when you come in, you prep underneath the stadium. It's almost, again, you run out. And since I was in 19th place, I was the first one to run out, for the first day. And so I'm leading everybody out into the stadium, and, and you're here. It was just a neat experience. I can still recall it. And, I think I moved up maybe to 15th. I finished 15th that year or something like that. But it was, like, one of our first events was bar muscle ups. I'd never done a bar muscle up in my life, because we didn't have a good bar for doing that at CrossFit 86. So I'm in the warm-up area trying to figure out watching the guys on how to do a bar muscle up. And it was just,
did you figure it out?
Yeah, I figured it out. The only problem is the bar in the warm-up area was slick, and the bar out there was hot and sandy. And so after the third one, I tore the flesh off my hands because I didn't have grips. It was a lot of that, figuring things out on the fly.
And so what happened at the end of that experience? Was that kind of like you you'd had a taste and you wanted to be back
Yeah,
every
we're
year.
going back. Yeah. It was enough of a taste that we're going back. And then, so the next year I was seeded 8th going into the games, and super excited. And my training had amped up.
And in your training, did you change anything? Were you still training at the box?
Yep.
Just training in group classes, doing your own stuff on a Saturday?
Yeah, pretty much. So I probably do less training than most of those guys in that phenomenal athletes too. I mean, when you get there and you see all of them and you're just like,
I've always been in awe of the age group guys.
you're just like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And you're talking to somebody and you're like, there's no way you're 55 years old. And but I would go like 4 days a week, so take one day off maybe during the week in the morning and train for 75 minutes. That would be it. So from 5:45 to 7, because then I had to rush to work. So I had to get to the embassy. So it was a mad rush. Like it was like, all right, 7 o'clock, head home. My wife would make some breakfast for me. I'd run up, shower, come down in a suit, grab the food, and take off, and be gone for the next, 11 hours, 12 hours. So I really didn't have any other time to train. I had to squeeze that in during the week. And then on Saturdays is when I would do like a 3 or 4 hour session of, maybe double session. And then Sunday sometimes. So that was all I was doing.
And so you get back to the games the next year,
Yep.
seeded 8th.
So seeded 8th, but my everything's going, my training's going well. I'm like, I'm going podium. And on the first, just like the year before, on the first event is, there's double unders. And so I'm practicing just before I go out there, and I pull a calf muscle. Also my calf goes boing. And I was like, and I couldn't put pressure on it. And so this is before anything starts. I'm looking at my coach. I'm like going, what am I going to do? I'm almost ready to just bow out because I can't jump on that leg right now. I need to watch the video. I haven't ever watched the video, but I did double unders on one leg, with just another leg falling on the side. And we had deadlifts that I was deadlifting really on one side of my body. And then right after that event, I went into the Aerosty guys and I was like, what's going on? And like, yeah, something, you tore something in here. And they just taped me up, and I just did my best for the rest. I still finished 8th, so that was good. But I was really hoping to get on that podium. So I had to go back in 2019.
So 2019, this is where you bump up an age bracket, right? So you're now going from one of the older guys in your division to now one of the younger guys in your new division.
Right.
You end up taking 2nd that year. So I'm always interested in the prep. Did the prep change again? Was there anything that you changed in that year?
Yeah, absolutely. So we now are living, during 2019, I'm living in Virginia, and I'm training in my garage. So I'm training all by myself. And
are you following a program? You have a coach?
So I did, that year, I was doing, CompTrain. I was using them as my base, and then I would adapt it to meet my needs. Yeah. So, I've played around with different programs. So I've looked at, I was with Mayhem for a little bit, CompTrain. I didn't follow it very long, but, little Invictus, and just, again, trying to get an idea of, what are other people using, and kind of reading through their programs, and even the, of course, the CrossFit.com site. And then what works for me and what doesn't work for me. A lot of the programming was just too much. I didn't have the time for it. If even a Masters athlete, they want you, you could be doing 3 hours a day. I was like, my job doesn't allow that.
Did that ever play on your mind, knowing that all your other competitors are doing more and, your life circumstances mean you can't do that? Because it sounds like right now you just kind of took it in your stride and you're still able to be successful.
Yeah.
But were there times where
Yeah, it would be nice if that you're not rushing out of the gym to, go to the next thing. But that's just, that's your situation. So you just live with it. Yeah. Less time wasted, thinking about it.
So, I mean, clearly that was a good year for you. I mean, you
Yeah.
ended up taking up second. I'm guessing no torn calves, no torn hands in the first event this year.
No, but I started
Something.
first event is always a mess for me, I guess. On that first event, I always put the brakes on during the event. And
Because of what happened in previous years, or
just I wasn't I think of it this way, think of it like running. So I was running as if it was a 800-meter race and it was a quarter-mile race. And so I just came out, and I actually came off the rower ahead of everybody and was like, oh, I'm going too fast. And we were doing burpees after that, and I put the brakes on. And then all of a sudden, and everybody was doing speed burpees over the bar, and I was taking my time. And all of a sudden I looked up and I was like, oh, it's the CrossFit Games.
I slap in the face.
Took last place in the first event. And so I was just like, oh, these guys are here for real, and it was a good wake up call, right? I won the next 3 events, but that was enough that it cost the game, because I didn't hit that first event hard. I paid for it. That was 100 points to build up.
And then obviously after that year, we got 2020. We got a big gap in your CrossFit Games leaderboard history because 2020 to 2024, obviously we had the pandemic. 2020, you qualified again, but that didn't happen that year. So what happens with your fitness in those 3 years? What are you doing? Like, is there the thoughts of one day when this maybe all blows over, I'm gonna be back at the CrossFit Games, or is the competitive side of Gregg and being at the CrossFit Games, is that something that you're letting go of?
Well, so a couple things happened in 2020. My knee, I had an issue with my knee, and so after, I still went to the Legends and participated in that. And that was in Arizona. That was a really good event. And but prior to that, my knee I was having issues with it. And so I couldn't squat. So I was doing everything but squatting.
Perfect for CrossFit.
Perfect for CrossFit, right? But I was committed to winning at Legends, so I kept all the other training going. It was just I couldn't squat. And so that caught, so when we had the event that was like cleans and box jumps, I'm just trying to survive without having my kneecap shoot across the room. And so then after that, I had to really just kind of back off my training. And then we moved to Algeria, and there's no CrossFit. Well, there's a place that did CrossFit, but it was like no official CrossFit boxes. And
training.
Yeah, so I led a morning group right at the embassy, and we had a fantastic group of people. Again, 6 a.m, trained for an hour, and that was a lot of fun because we had a good community of people, and they're still doing it. So they're still it's continuing, and so it was a lot of fun.
But in that time with your training, okay, you've identified that you got to back off a little bit. You got to let this knee heal. But is there ambitions to one day get back to being competitive?
So like one of my concerns, we arrived in Hong Kong, and last summer, and Janet's already like, you need to find a CrossFit box, because there wasn't, there was no place real. There was a place, but it was a little further away, and it just didn't. My schedule wasn't going to allow it. And I was like, I'm not ready yet, because I know what's going to happen once I join. Right, I'm gonna just start pushing myself hard. And so I was still trying to rebuild that knee. And even I came in and Skulk, I'm going to say Skulk. Yeah, Skulk was there. And he's yeah, you got to come in. And I was like, well, yeah, we'll see. And but when the open happened, I was like, I'm going to do the open, and I'm going to make it to the games this year. And
You did the open knowing that you hadn't really trained or prepared for it,
right,
but you just in your head you were saying, "I'm going to make it to the games."
I'll make it to the games this year,
Regardless of the fact the last few years.
regardless of anything else.
Where's that come from? Where's that self belief come from?
I don't know. It's just, you know, that you're gonna push yourself to that limit, and it just worked out, right? I think I don't know what I took in the open.
I don't know. I just remember that I know you took 5th in semifinals, but
so.
I also think that when you've been doing it, we actually ended up. I think we pretty much entered CrossFit around the same time. 2013, 2014 was when officially kind of joined the gym, and we opened this gym and started doing it a bit more seriously. But I think, you know, with someone like yourself, you have all the skills. You know, you've been doing handstand walks, handstand push-ups, chest to bar pull-ups, toes to bars, muscle ups, snatches, clean and jerks, you know, for 10 years or more, probably every week in some way, shape or form. And of course, you've got all that athletic history that happened before all of that as well. So you've got that advantage, don't you? Where, you know, you don't lose the skills, nor do you have to necessarily put in as much time as someone learning those skills, you know, who's a bit newer to it. And I guess it's just about kind of dusting off the cobwebs, but then also still having the desire to want to do hard stuff. I think that's what I have found, you know, in the last couple of years, is that the desire to really make a workout hurt now compared to 5-6 years ago. That's probably the bit I struggle with more. And I think, you know, for me, that's just because probably life priorities have changed. There's other things I want to pour energy and time into, but I also know that there is still a competitive athlete in me that wants to do the open every year. And to be honest, I want to do more than the open. And when that time comes around, like, I just find it very hard to hold myself back.
It's I think for most people, you know, once you start going, the momentum starts building, and it increases, and you just want to keep pushing hard. I actually have to put the brakes on because so that I don't, because my body is older, you know, and I do have you know, old wounds that, you know, just I've got to pay attention to, or else they'll flare up and hold me back for several weeks.
What are some of those old wounds, if you don't mind sharing?
So just different torn muscles, and there's been some, you know, a couple broken bones that, you know, that just irritate a little bit, and you just and there's probably been over the years, there's been compensation, you know, and so there's a minor misalignment in you know, different places to compensate for a weak area, and if you drive too hard with that misalignment, you know, A, you're just going to encourage it more, and B, you're something's else is gonna hurt. And so so it's knowing when it's time to hit it, you go after it, but you also have to pay attention that you're giving yourself adequate rest.
And you're training now. You're still training once a day.
Once a day. Sometimes, no. I mean, sometimes I'm able to, like today, I was able to get in a double.
But right, I mean, right now we're in CrossFit Games mode.
Yeah.
Right. You know, we're 6-7 weeks out.
I would like to, you know, I've got basically 6 more weeks of training, so I have to get in a couple more doubles, you know, or on a regular basis. But yeah, otherwise it's once a day.
What have been the biggest changes that you have noticed with your physical body over the last 10 years, you know, as you continue to age and still continue to do this methodology and training? What are some of the biggest notable changes that you've noticed?
So when I started CrossFit, it was a big deal to get your first muscle up, right? It was a big deal to do your first clean and jerk at 100 kg. It was a big deal, you know, it was a big deal to, you know, pull 400 pounds. And then, even though I was in my late 40s, coming up even into 50, I was still getting I was getting PRs. Now I'm not aware of any more PRs. So it's dealing with what knowing that the slope is going down, which can be frustrating. You're like, I know I used to be able to lift this no problem, and now it's a little bit, so paying attention to that. I laugh because I remember even watching when going to the games in 2019, watching the guys who are the 55 to 59 and seeing how much slower they were moving compared to us. I was like, man, I'm not going to do CrossFit anymore if I'm going to, and that's what happens. Your body just is, especially like in something like box jumps or something like that. You just cannot, you don't have that explosive power as you used to. So, and I spend a lot more time now on my prep that I'm prepping all my muscles correctly before I go out there.
Yeah, I've noticed you're very diligent with your prep before a session, very comprehensive with it. It always looks like you're going into that prep with a bit of a plan, or you've got your routines from what you've done for so long. What about life outside the gym? Like what has changed and things you do outside the gym that has enabled you to still achieve performance inside the gym or in competitions? Is there anything that's changed or things you've added to your toolbox that you feel has made a difference?
I don't know. Maybe again, every place you live, it's a little bit different. Having a wonderful wife makes a difference, because then if you've got she's always asked, how is your training, and stuff. And she now, she comes to the box. I think that's a huge part that I've got a great wife who encourages me in what I'm doing. Being empty nesters now helps, because that's one less, now you're not trying to squeeze in workouts. I think of all the different times doing open workouts in another city, because I was like with my son who's had a volleyball tournament in another city, and I'm knocking on a door of a CrossFit box going, hey, can I do the open workout? I got to get it in. And having to ask them that. So, we have a little bit more time as empty nesters. I think in Hong Kong, one of the things that's helped me is I walk a lot. So I'm easily getting in, 10,000 steps a day, easily here. And so that's just, you're just kind of getting that general movement all the time. I do the best I can with my diet. I'm not a diet freak. And so, you try to, give the best fuel you can and you work from there.
Hours of sleep?
Most part it's good, but sometimes it's,
How many are we talking for you? What's you have a goal you try to hit? What's a typical night for Gregg is how many hours?
If I can get 7, that's great. Yeah, that's great. I went for years getting less than 6 and thinking that I could be a good athlete with less than 6. And that's, and that was actually one of the big differences I made between 2015 and 16. As I said, I'm going to stay in this bed for 7 hours, even if I'm not sleeping. It's like, once you go in, it's the clock starts and you can't get out of that bed. And that actually made a big difference in my recovery. I wish I could, do 8 hours, but it just doesn't happen.
Love it. Gregg, to finish off Hong Kong, what's this chapter of life been like for you so far?
Love it. It's a great place. Hong Kong's a great city. So, work's busy. There's great community here. I like swimming, so doing open water swims out, and there's great beaches to swim at. The mountains are fantastic. I'm not the biggest fan of Hong Kong style food, but it's there's lots of good places to eat. Yeah, it's been a good it's been a good choice. I'm excited for the next 2 years, and I found an incredible CrossFit box here. And so you got to come visit CSTL.
I was counting. I was looking at the watch, being like, when do we get a mention?
No, I mean, and in all honesty, you've put together a really good place here. Nothing but the highest regard for how you mentor your coaches, and then how they then take what you teach them and build a good training program here. And you watch how just even what Janet and I have been here now, I only say 4 months maybe. So February, March timeframe. And I've already seen, like 20 more people show up since then. You've had a lot of people coming in, and you watch I like how you put them through, hey, you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z before we're going to let you get in a class, which is important, so that they're not fumbling around and hurting themselves. And the coaches know, how to deal with new, just like I was, before, like a white belt versus a black belt. You're dealing with, you got to be able to adapt to the skill level of the people you're coaching. They do a really good job at that. And they all have a unique, capability and, specialty, which is good.
I appreciate that, Greg. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us as well. Obviously, it's not often that an next CrossFit Games athlete walks into the doors of an affiliate and says, "Hey, I'd like to join your program." But I think for all of us, it's been very, very cool, despite the history and what you've achieved already in this sport. How humble you are. You are still very much a part of the community as much as anyone else. You still join our group classes. You throw down just as much as everyone else does. It's been really cool to have both you and Janet in the community. So thank you for being a part of it.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Greg, our final question when we have a guest on this podcast is as follows. If you were to describe your perfect day, what would it look like?
My perfect day? Well, first to wake up, start waking up helps, right? But, waking up where you're not, where you're like, let's hit it today, right? That's a good day. I like being up early. So I like it when it's still dark outside and to wake up when I wake up early. And it's quiet.
Are you an alarm guy, or are you a natural? Do you naturally rise?
I have alarm as a backup, but most of the time I'm waking up about 5 minutes before the alarm goes off. I enjoy a good cup of coffee in the morning, but having something to do. It doesn't have to be work, but I do enjoy my job, and so I do look forward to going to the office. But I like having something that's going to be doing my exercise in the morning if I can. So that's why when I come in, you'll see me here at whatever 6 a.m. or 5:45 something. And then get to spend time with people. Some type of activity, outdoor activity, getting to spend time with friends, and a good meal at the end of the day. That about hits it.
Sounds like a great day, Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me on here, and good luck to you this season. We can't wait to see you out there doing what you love. And thank you for joining me on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, and it's been great.